Hello and welcome to the Andy Plex. I'm your host, Andy Plex, and this is episode 48, Gunga Din. Continuing the literary series of books and poems turned film, returning alum, my father, Giovanni Maiorano, is back for his third appearance to discuss one of his favorites, the 1939 action epic Gunga Din. Based on the Rudyard Kipling poem, directed by George Stevens and starring Cary Grant, Victor McLaglen, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., and Sam Jaffe as the titular role, Gunga Din, this film is now 86 years old, making it the oldest film discussed on this podcast, dethroning the last Dad and I covered together, The Raven, 2 episodes ago. Dad, welcome back.
It's great to be here, Andrew. Always enjoy it. Thank you for having me today.
I appreciate you making time to do the show and to have me for a couple of weeks again here in Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware.
Yes, it's always good. You know, it makes your mother happy.
Happy wife, happy life.
That's it.
Yes, so Dad, this is now your third episode. We did one at the end of 21 where we discussed A Christmas Carol.
Yes.
Charles Dickens, which is a favorite of ours, specifically the 1984 George C. Scott version, which we again watched for the 90 millionth time together.
Right.
This just a couple of weeks ago, right before Christmas. Today is January 6th, 2025. Wow, 2025. That's turn of the quarter century.
It is. And just think, only 4 years ago, we almost had a revolution. But here we're talking about poetry and not politics.
Maybe a little bit of both if you're lucky, if you hang in there. Dad, I love you. You've been a massive inspiration for me in many fronts, one being film and literature as well. Mom as well, shout out to her. But this is one that you have talked about for years, hadn't seen it. We watch Christmas Carol every year for Christmas, but this is one you've talked about a lot. And I know you love the poem. I think about 15 years ago, we filmed you recording the poem by Kipling.
Correct.
It's a banger. And so today will be a fun experiment to continue our poems and literature turned film for Gunga Din. Now, when was the first time you saw Gunga Din, Dad?
Okay, let's start out immediately by saying we say Gunga Din, but actually in the movie it was brought out clearly, and I knew this going in. It's Gunga Din.
Gunga Din.
Gunga Din, which is a combination of 2 words from 2 different regions of India. Okay, the first time I saw this, I caught a fragment of it, and it had to be back in 1957, 58. And of course, it was in black and white. It is in black and white, and I saw it on a TV that was black and white. And back then, there were commercials you couldn't rewind. So
you couldn't rewind.
I know, the horror.
The horror.
And so I didn't see the beginning of it, but I did see the parts of it at the end.
Okay, cool. So if you had to guess what year that was, not to
the year I saw it,
if you had to take a ballpark.
I believe, I was 11 or 12, so it was 57, 58 in that era.
Okay.
Got it. I am 80 years old. We're pushing it.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Let's not add years onto our years. Although you have always been very worldly and read and cultured.
Well, thank you.
You got it. Okay, well, before we watched it to get ready for today, when do you think you saw it last before that? So somewhere between 58, 59, and 2024, which is when we watched it, at the very end of 24.
I cannot answer that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No problem, no problem.
It's a good question, but...
Now, is it something that, you might have rented later and forgotten, or maybe something it was re-aired again?
Yes, if I didn't rent the movie on VHS, which some of you may remember what that is.
Yes.
But I probably saw it maybe on a PBS, one of those where they would feature older movies, at night. So, but I definitely saw it on television. When I'm sorry, I can't say. But it's always stuck in my mind.
Yeah, it's always stuck to you.
The Richard McLaughlin.
Did I say his name wrong? I think I did.
I'm not sure. It's Irish. You know how I have trouble with them.
I'm sorry, I mispronounced it.
But anyway, I remember his character, and if I had to identify with any of them, it would have been that.
Okay, yeah. So that's actually a great segue into my next question for you, Dad. Is why do you think this one really stuck to the ribs per se? Why do you think it kept ruminating in your brain over the years?
Well,
what about it?
Well, what the the Gunga Din, the water bearer,
Right.
He's in other movies that they're called darkies or swarthies, and they're very prejudiced against, because they're not white or Christian, and they were belittled at best, if not beaten at worst, which comes out in the poem, which we'll discuss in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But anyway, it's the fact that Gunga Din was, as one would say, he was a mensch. He really was a people person, and he wanted to help him. He wanted to serve him. And that comes out, in the movie more strongly than it does in the poem. Though at the end of the poem, he does give his kudos to Gunga Din.
Mm-hmm.
So
hats off.
Yeah, and it shows that even the poorest and underprivileged person can achieve and help humanity in one form or another, and you can start doing that today. You don't have to wait to do that.
I love this. Yeah, no, it's. So this was my first and only watch of this film, and I knew it was going to be good because you so highly recommended it, and have discussed it and talked about it. But there's a little bit of, if I may, prejudice towards older films, especially going back that long. I mean, this is now an 86-year-old movie, and I'm always kind of a little blindsided when a movie like this one does actually kick ass, for lack of a better term. The action is really gripping. There's a 10+ minute action sequence in the beginning in one of the towns, and we're with the English armies in India to kind of set the stage, and then we meet our mains. But like you said when we were watching it, there's no CGI back then, and everything you're seeing is actually the amount of actors and background actors and choreography and sets and just raw stuff needed to populate the frame that you saw is just, it's mind-boggling. And yeah, there's always it's black and white, but some of the greatest films are in black and white, and this one really rips. It really rocks. If you guys haven't seen it yet, I can't recommend it highly enough. It's really, really good. It holds up ridiculously well. But to go back to what Dad's saying, it's not just a spectacle. I mean, I imagine at the time it would have been absolutely mind-blowing. Let's go see this cool battle movie, action war movie. Probably had a lot of young people going. I would imagine a lot of young boys would be really drawn to this. But there is so much good story, so much good character, and you kind of nailed it on the head that this Gunga Din character epitomizes a noble pursuit from any background or any upbringing, right? It doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take just the choices we make to support and help and further along others is there, and it's so powerful in this one. Obviously, he's the titular line in the movie. I don't even know how many lines he really has altogether, but he's the movie's called Gunga Din. The poem is called Gunga Din. So yeah, it blew me away. It blew me away. So Dad is going to recite a little bit of the poem for us. But before we do that, let's actually just a little bit of the Wikipedia synopsis of the movie, so we have a little bit of perspective between, because we're going to be looking at the differences between the poem and the film. So, plot. On the northwest frontier of India, circa 1880, contact is lost with a British outpost at Tantapur while it is in the midst of sending a telegraph message. Colonel Weed dispatches a detachment of 25 British Indian Army troops to investigate, led by 3 sergeants of the Royal Engineers. McChesney, Cutter, and Ballantine, longtime friends and veteran campaigneers. Campaigneers? So that's our Cary Grant, Victor McLaughlin, and Douglas Fairbanks Jr. These guys, although they are a disciplinary headache for their colonel, they are the right men to send on a dangerous mission. Accompanying the detail are 6 Indian camp workers, including Regimental Bisti water carrier Gunga Din, who longs to throw off his lowly status and become a soldier of the Queen. And here's his chance. They find Tantapur apparently deserted and set about repairing the telegraph. However, they are soon surrounded by hostile locals. The troops find their way out, taking heavy losses. That's the battle I just talked about. It was like, really, I think it was like 12 minutes long. It's pretty amazing. Colonel Weed and Major Mitchell identify an enemy weapon brought back by the survivors as belonging to the Thuggee, a murder cult that had been suppressed 50 years previously. Weed intends to send McChesney and Cutter back with a larger force to order to retake the town and complete the telegraph repairs. Ballantine, however, is due to muster out of the army in a few days. Weed orders Sergeant Higginbotham, disliked by both McChesney and Cutter, to join the expedition as Ballantine's replacement. Once he is discharged, Ballantine plans to wed Emmy Stebbins and go into the tea business, a combined calamity that McChesney and Cutter consider worse than death. McChesney and Cutter are invited to the engagement party, intending to cause mischief. They spike the punch, which is subsequently drunk by Higginbotham. Hilarious scene. Higginbotham is so sick the following morning that he is unable to march out with the expedition, so a reluctant Ballantine is ordered to replace him. And then, I don't want to give you guys all of this because, save some fun. But basically, they go out and Cary Grant, Sergeant Cutter, is lost amidst a Thuggee cult.
Yes.
And then the others basically have to come and save him and alert the forces, the English forces that are going to be attacked by this cult.
Well, we don't have to go into it. That the three sergeants are survive. Cary Grant, as Sergeant
Archibald Cutter.
Archibald Cutter.
Great name.
And Victor McLaughlin as Sergeant McChesney. He was the ranking sergeant. He was older, and Douglas Fairbanks Jr. was Sergeant Thomas Ballantine.
And Douglas Fairbanks Jr. was only, he was in his 20s when they made this, right?
That I don't know, but the interesting part about that is Victor McLaughlin.
30. Okay.
He was older. He didn't come about to being in movies for a while. He was like a bouncer. In some ways, he sort of reminded me of Pope Francis, who worked as a bouncer before he achieved, professionalism.
Yeah, he was deep into his 40s when they made this movie.
Yeah, and and he was very good. He came across as, all of them came across as realistic, though it could have been a little slapstick there at the time.
There's some moments, especially with the punch, and then even there's even some gags when they're kind of fighting some of the armies, and they're falling out of windows and stuff like that. But I honestly think most of it really holds up, and for a movie that's going on almost 90.
The bones of the movie are buried in the poem by Rudyard Kipling. Okay,
right,
and they obviously had to flesh it out because you can't make a movie out of a poem like this. Mm-hmm. Any more than you could with, The Raven.
The Raven, yeah.
You have to,
exactly.
There's the bones.
There has to be some poetic license.
Although in The Raven, I think the bones were thrown out with the soup. But
the 1963 Roger Corman one we discussed. There is an older one, which we should do a follow up on that maybe next Halloween.
Sure. With the Gunga Din, the poem, the first time you encounter him, in the movie. He's dressed up relatively well. He has his turban on, it's nice, and he doesn't wear a loincloth. He actually has something very nice. And that goes against what was in the poem, because in the poem it says a twisted rag and a goatskin water bag. So his loincloth was a twisted rag. So these guys not only moved along, providing water as needed there in the hot desert, but they had to supply their own equipment.
Yeah.
And you think somewhere along the line somebody would have thrown something away that this guy could wear. But in the movie, it was white, and it stood out, and well, it sort of added, at the end, some dignity to the man who, in the movie, wants to become a soldier. And the Cary Grant character, Archibald, he works with him, whether it's tongue-in-cheek or he really wants to do it. We don't know why he's training him, but he does in some small way.
Yeah. No, that's well said, Dad. Yeah, it's beautiful. All right, well, before we continue to discuss the differences, let's hear, I guess, not the entirety of this poem, but...
I'll start out by reading the beginning and the end.
Okay.
It's the
and this was written when again?
1880
or something?
1882 or something like that. It couldn't be 82 because that's when all this was going on. But it didn't appear to
Here.
1890 or something like that.
1890.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so here we go.
All right. Gunga Din.
You may talk of gin and beer when you're quartered safe out here, and you're sent to penny fights and outer shutter. But when it comes to slaughter, you'll do your work on water, and you'll lick the bloomin' boots at him that's caught it. Now in India's sunny clime, where I used to spend me time, a servant of Her Majesty the Queen, of all that black-faced crew, the finest man I knew was a regimental beast, a Gunga Din. He was ding, 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 you limpin' lump of brick dust, Gunga Din. High, slippery, hithery, low, water, get it, panelio, you squidgy nosed old idol Gunga Din. Okay, so you can see what they thought of poor old Gunga there at the beginning. He was a black-faced crew, and of course that was not a good thing. Then let's go to the end, as the metamorphosis takes place. Not Gunga Din's metamorphosis, because he was always that way, but their metamorphosis, the soldier's metamorphosis, the white man's metamorphosis of the swarthy Indian. All right, I'll just read the whole last paragraph there.
Yeah.
He's wounded, okay? This is read in a Cockney accent, which I don't pretend to be able to do. He carried me away to where a dolly lay, he being Gunga Din, and this guy was shot in battle, to where a dolly lay, and a bullet came and drilled the beggar clean. He put me safe inside, and just before he died, I hope you liked your drink, says Gunga Din. So I'll meet him later on at the place where he's gone, where it's always double drill and no canteen. He'll be squatting on the coals, giving drink to poor damn souls, and I'll get a swing in hell from Gunga Din. Yes, ding, 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 you Lazaruthian leather Gunga Din. Though I belted you and flayed you by the living God that made you, you're a better man than I am, Gunga Din. Now, how many hundreds of times have you heard a variation of that line? You're a better man than I am, Gunga Din. I mean, okay. The only place I really didn't hear was in the story about the gingerbread man. Run as fast as you can can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. That's
That's the only other story that wasn't touched by this in some form.
Yes.
That's thank you, Dad, for that reading. Yeah, it's really cool. And Dad's been a big proponent of a few poems, and one of them is that one. And I've heard it over the years, so I don't have the relativity of knowing if others have heard it, but. It's obviously a classic, and they made a gigantic movie out of it in 1939, and it was really cool. Basically, they had Kipling be a character in the movie, and he wrote the poem at the end, and it's like the movie was made and then reverse engineered to make the poem.
Yes.
After the efforts and heroism and, as you said, metamorphosis and rising up of Gunga Din. Played by Sam Jaffe,
yes.
Who did a great job.
And it was questionable why they cast him in that part.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second, because he's not Indian.
He's American.
Yeah, he's an American actor.
Yeah.
And you had a lot of British actors here. George Stevens, the director, is British. Obviously, Cary Grant and Douglas Fairbanks Jr. are British actors, depicting the British Army. But it was a Hollywood film made here. Shot all over, but produced by Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I thought, man, yeah. I mean, in black and white, it's kind of like, oh, he's tan, and
Right.
obviously, the black and white does kind of change the dynamic of the visual. But he nailed it. He was perfect, and he offered kind of the part four of this, quartet of the three guys that knew each other really well. And I think that was the takeaway for me the most, was that it was about these three guys, and then they were teamed up with Gunga Din, and then Gunga Din takes the fall in the end. But he warns the powers that be about the thuggy cult that's amassing, and saves them and puts himself in harm's way, and is the hero, but passes away. And classic sacrificial lamb, he took one, he took the fall, and then they wrote the poem about him. So it's very powerful, and as you said, we don't lose any of the three of the mains, and they're able to see life beyond the war, and see life beyond this thuggy cult uprising. Now, while I'm talking about the thuggy cult, as I'm watching it, I was biting my tongue. Actually, I wanted to kind of interrupt the movie, but I didn't want to interrupt the flow too bad. But I was like, oh my god, this is Indiana Jones 2. This is Temple of Doom, which was 1984, which was much after this. And obviously Spielberg and Lucas were depicting Indiana Jones was kind of an amalgam of older serial adventures and adventure stories. And obviously this one would have been in their canon as students of that era. And I just honestly was like, oh my god, this is like so similar to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which I revisited because the Dial of Destiny came out a couple summers ago. So I just recently rewatched the first three. And yeah, anyway, I just wanted to say that I actually looked it up online, and there's a whole thread on Reddit about how there's obviously Indiana Jones is different. It's about archaeologists. This is about an army that runs into this cult by being over there in India. But anyway, it was striking, and even the main villain was this psychopath, and he was willing to sacrifice his own life. So this villain was played by Eduardo Cianelli. So a nice Italian boy playing a Indian thuggy cult leader. And they just credited him as Guru on IMDb. Yeah, I don't think he had a name, right?
No, he did not have a name.
But he was absolutely sinister. And he ends up, killing himself to prove a point, to, fuel the flames of his own cult. So his commitment to and dedication to the movement was very strong. And he played a very good foil to our leads, and he was truly scary. And there were some really scary moments in this movie. Another similarity to Indiana Jones, or should I say Indiana Jones' similarity to It, being much earlier, was this pit of snakes that was horrifying. All these like venomous cobras and stuff, which were real. And they would throw people into the pit to either make them talk or kill them. And it was pretty horrifying.
Yeah.
Some dark stuff.
It was. To go back to the Guru, as we were just talking about, he was the counterpoint of evil and not helping, and he didn't care who died as long as he got his way. And then you have Gunga Din, who was, on the other side of the scale, who would do anything to help you. As a matter of fact, in that battle scene that Andrew keeps talking about, where at the end of that, you see Gunga Din come over and giving water to one of the dying enemy. So he was a humanist, and he cared. And then and he didn't voluntarily die. He didn't give up his life for nothing, as the Guru did, because he thought it would free his men from this horde of men. I don't know how they got all these people out there, but it was just unbelievable.
Quite the horde.
It was a horde and a half. And so, it was unbelievably well done for a picture of that period.
Stunning, truly.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, it's jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
And I just saw Gladiator 2. Dad's seen the first one. He hasn't seen the second one yet. And there is a lot of computer-generated elements that some people are grumbling over. I thought it was actually really good, but there's something about when you see real stuff happening, that it's just in your brain. It's just irreplaceable. It's unmistakable. It's like your brain sees that it's real. Now, sure, there's things there's things that you just can't do still, right? Like dinosaurs and whatnot. But even Jurassic Park used a lot of practical. This was in the early 90s. But in a movie like this, they didn't even have the option for any of this stuff. So it was like there was these scenes where there's two people talking and there's just all these guys in the background, doing marches and stuff. And it's just jaw-dropping. And it's just unbelievable. And I think that's really the secret sauce of these old films, is that it's real,
No, it's hats off to the directors of that time that were able to produce such images. And being in black and white, when we were looking at it, we had to pause for a second, and there was a still frame up there. And it was like one of those old pictures, that you saw. It was so clear and everything.
Truly.
And you could just see the art that was involved in creating that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, as was the art involved in writing this poem, because he brings you from, being dismayed with Gunga Din until the end. He said, "You're a better man than I am," and they're both going to be sitting in hell, drinking water served by Gunga Din, which is a bit arrogant, on the white man's burden here. If to go back to the period,
yeah.
First of all, England was there not as a friendly nation. They were a conquering nation. They were never there.
What was it? The sun never sets on the British Empire?
That's true, and they were working on it. India, and which is well, we all know about India, large continent, over a billion people, and 126 languages. I don't know how they ever what their voting ballots look like.
That's a very good question.
But so
another podcast.
Yeah. Yes.
So what really I thought, we're talking about the differences between the poem and the film. Now, obviously, as you said before, you have to expand and extrapolate and add. But what Wikipedia is saying here is that it's a combination of the poem, but also Kipling's 1888 short story collection, Soldiers 3. Now, the film is about these three British sergeants and Gunga Din, the water bearer. So I thought, man, they added all this on. So I thought it was really cool. I did not know that. Did you know anything about Soldiers 3 or have any exposure to that?
No, I didn't. But when I familiarized myself with what you're reading, or a version thereof somewhere else, that they took that and they incorporated that into this movie, obviously with the three sergeants, but they were still able to keep the character, the inner person of Gunga Din, true and accurate, because he was brave. It says here, if we dart or broke or cut, you can bet your bloomin' nut he always be 50 paces right back rear. During the battle, Gunga Din was there.
Boom, he's always there.
Took his chances. He was there to try and help these guys that were shot and wounded. Now, he might be giving water to the enemy that were shot and wounded, or not. We don't go into that in the poem, but I believe he would have done that if he wasn't going to run out of water.
Right, the water bearer's oath, or like
yes.
Like the Hippocratic oath. As you said, he was a noble person, and I think it's this powerful, kind of beautiful dialectic dichotomy where on one hand you have these guys with guns and they're going out and they're, committing murder, for lack of a better word. Of course, during wartime it's called, bravery and heroism, but it's more or less attacking and killing another party that you're disagreeing with. And then right to the right is Gunga Din with his water and doling it out, and not dressed in the combat uniforms of the time, not wearing the fancy ornaments of the time, not weaponized, not armed only with water, the life-giving element. So the duality of guns next to water, there's something there, and I think that's really what Kipling picked up on, and a lot of people picked up on. And the fact that he always wanted to be a soldier for the Queen, obviously not doing it to be a killer, but to serve. So there's the element of service. the element of serving. And I think there's nothing purer than giving water. So it's not something you really think about when you think about battles. It's not something that's always depicted in the imagery or in the documentaries or whatever. But yeah, you got to drink water, and it's literally the life force, the life essence, right?
It starts out, and when it comes to slaughter, you'll do your work on water and lick the blooming boots im det skottet. And
that's not a bad Cockney accent, Dad. You put yourself down earlier. I think it's pretty good.
Thank you.
You've got the voice down. You do.
Victor McLaughlin would be very happy to hear it.
This was an RKO Radio Pictures film. It said it had a budget of $1,915,000 and did a box office of $2,807,000. So almost $1 million profit. Yeah. So that's actually pretty good. I mean, it's not a massive hit, but I mean, $2 million at the time was a lot of money. So this was a big budget movie in the late 30s.
Well, you figure back then, I'm quite sure if adults were not paying much more than 25 cents to go into a movie.
Right. Yeah.
Because I remember way back when you could go to a Saturday matinee and it might cost you 15, 20 cents to get in and see 3 movies, 2 cartoons and a newsreel,
Yep.
Your parents
Full
just
day.
shipped you off there.
Right. You said your mom would do that all the time, right?
Every once in a while, yeah, here's 50 cents. Take your sister.
Go leave me alone.
Go, get out of here.
Yeah, I got to clean the house.
And we would walk to the movie theater, so a good mile.
Did you have a water carrier?
Never thought about it.
How far was it?
About a mile.
About a
From
mile?
Our house in the town was at least a mile.
Yeah, that was another era. You wouldn't send your children alone at that age.
And we always lied about not being 12 years old.
Oh, you had to be 12
You had to be 12 to
get in?
get the children's discount. So.
Okay, there you go. They never questioned, never fought you on that?
Yeah, you were questioned.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You had to work on your story?
Well, you had to be good at lying, but the woman there collecting tickets, she knew better. She goes, your mustache is longer than that or something. I remember that was...
At least shave, John.
At least shave before...
Yeah, that's great. No, I mean, we talked about that era in the Raven movie podcast and the Raven story podcast. At that time, were you kind of following specific actors, or were you following specific,
back then?
directors, or was it just, this is the hot movie at the time, we got the day off, whatever, mom gave me the money?
No, as you alluded to earlier, if it was a war movie and I thought that I was going to see blood and guts on the screen, that my friends and I would go.
Okay, that was
the modus.
Was a selling point.
And I was a big, B-movie sci-fi fan, which is another thing we can get into another,
I know you are, and you've turned me into one as well.
No, at that time, we didn't get to the movies that often back then. But there was television, and on Saturday nights I would stay with my grandparents along with my cousin brother Phil, and we would look at my grandparents liked westerns, so I liked Have Gun Will Travel, and Richard Boone was definitely my favorite. You asked me if I was following somebody, I followed him, and that movie and that show Have Gun Will Travel ran for 9 years.
Yeah.
And they were doing 36 episodes a year. Think of that. And,
That's crazy.
And they were 26 minutes long. I mean, with credits, of course. And now you only get 20 minutes of content and 10 minutes of commercials.
Yeah.
So
different era for sure. Much longer seasons.
Back then, yeah.
It was a different time. Yeah. No, that's a classic you exposed me to. Great show. Paladin. Yeah, that was really cool. You got me into westerns as well. I remember when I was younger, it took me a little while to get warmed up to westerns, which is, I guess, ironic for a young boy. But the westerns were the hotness back then. But this movie, Gunga Din, it kind of, and I wanted to touch on this, that is a real genre bender for me, is what I really noticed. Yes, it's an epic war piece. It's a drama. It's comedic, a lot of comedy elements, kind of broad comedy, a lot of physical gags. The punch at the wedding definitely was a major selling point. But this buddy war epic. I mean, if I had to pitch it to somebody now, I'd call it a buddy war epic.
Yeah.
And Gunga Din was the fourth buddy, and they went on a journey together, and obviously Cary Grant's the one that needed rescuing, but yeah, it was not what I thought it was going to be at all going in. It really completely derailed my expectations.
Well, how do you take a rhyming narrative, which is what Gunga Din, the poem, is, I mean, the rhyme schemes and everything, which I talked about when we did The Raven, how that type of rhyming and internal rhyming appeals to me, my sense of creativity. I can appreciate it. So I think they turned it into a great movie. Again, I have to reinforce my belief that it stays true to the character of Gunga Din.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great to see at the end of that movie where he is actually raised to the highest point at the time of his death, literally and physically.
Yeah, well said. The metamorphosis, as you said earlier, was complete. He achieved his dream. He realized his dream, and I love what you said earlier, Dad, about how it's not about where you come from. It's not about your upbringing, your economic status, your class, all that. It's about the choices you make. It's about your intentions. And actually, we were in church yesterday, and there was a mention, we just lost Jimmy Carter, R.I.P. President Jimmy Carter, who was a real hero and did a lot of good. And I believe it was a comic of him showing up in heaven. And they're like, oh, hey, Jimmy, welcome to heaven. And the first thing he says is, hey, thanks for having me. How can I help? What can I do? And that it's literally like, no matter where you are, what you're doing, you can help. And I love what you said about him and the main villain, the guru, played by Eduardo Cianelli. Cianelli? That sounded good. It sounded Italian.
Yeah.
So I really, really thought that they nailed it. And then hearing the poem at the end read in front of the troops, and it's powerful, and honoring this man and honoring his contributions. And I just think it's a masterpiece. I think it's an important movie. I think it's powerful. And I definitely am going to be putting it in rotation. I'm going to be coming back for it more. I really think it's a powerful film. And I mean, yeah, came for the action, stayed for the powerful themes and transformative energy of the film. So that's me.
All right. I think we covered all our bases with the movie and the poem.
Yeah.
And again, it's great being here, and all of you out there in Radioland. We keep reading your messages as you send them to us, and it's very interesting. We have some good questions to consider for our next episodes.
Yeah. Actually, that's great. Want to get Dad back again. I'll be back to Delaware in May to work on a film festival. I'll be co-directing the Wilmington Independent Film Festival here in Wilmington, Delaware, at the Riverfront, which is really exciting. At the Penn Cinema IMAX theater, we'll be there. Like middle of May. So I'll budget some time to do another episode with Dad, and we can think about another project we want to sink our teeth into. But if you guys, I think we're thinking another B movie, maybe something from the 50s. I know you're a big Day the Earth Stood Still. It Came From Beneath the Sea. Anything else you like? The Blob.
The Blob, the H-Men.
What was it? Them?
Earth versus Fly Saucers. Them scared the hell out of me. I mean, I was like 11 years old, and I had to worry about going to the bathroom or something. You didn't know when those ants were going to come out.
Didn't know where them were going to be coming for you. All right, well, yeah, reach out if you have any ideas for something Dad and I can discuss from that era, something you want to hear. Go ahead and reach out in the comments in either SoundCloud or my email, andymaiorano@gmail.com. And that's it.
Well, one of your listeners just sent us a suggestion that the day the Earth stood still Or did we already say that one?
Yeah, no, that one did come in, and that's a
Thank you.
big one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Charles in charge 43. Thank you. We appreciate that. Look at that interactivity.
Yes, it is. All of you out there in Radio Land, have a great one. Happy New Year.